With the exception of a few extra-large countries, the thought of domestic flights might be more often associated with short hops using regional jets to get to a hub for onward travel, or perhaps regular intercity travel for business reasons, or using small aircraft to access remote parts of a country. Sometimes domestic flights last minutes, while they may be 7-hour-plus mammoth journeys. In today's video, let's take a look at some of the longest scheduled domestic services taking place this month. The US and Russia are especially noted for very long domestic flights. Russia is the world's largest country by geographic area, so the vast majority of its domestic routes, even those over 4,000 miles or 6,437 kilometers, don't enter international airspace, even during regular times. It seems a very obvious and unworthy question. A domestic flight is a flight within one nation. However, as you might expect, it is more complicated than that. France remains very close to multiple territories that form overseas France, or Outre-mer, far away from the motherland. For all intents and purposes, they function like any other part of France, and flights to Paris or anywhere else in France would be considered domestic. It is the same with the Netherlands and overseas territories in the Caribbean. As a passport is ordinarily not required for a domestic flight, it becomes even more complicated and debatable. After all, while some French or Dutch overseas territories are members of the European Union or are special territories of the EU, they aren't part of the Schengen area. As the Schengen area abolishes internal border checks, not being part of it means a passport check is required. Can this therefore be considered domestic? Well, that's up to you to decide. And what about stopping in an international country en route, even if for refueling and/or a crew change? Ordinarily, this wouldn't be considered domestic. What about a stop in another overseas territory that's also regarded as domestic? With all of this in mind, check out the 10 longest domestic regularly scheduled flights shown here. As you can see, the flight from Papeete, Tahiti to Paris-Orly tops the list in terms of distance, although it does have a stop in San Francisco. The next 4 flights also involve France and a destination in one of its overseas territories. Lower on the list are 3 services which connect Hawaii to the US East Coast, while 2 connect the Netherlands with overseas territories. It's up to you if you agree on whether or not some or all of these flights can be considered domestic services. After all, many flights to the Dutch Caribbean, Aruba, Bonaire and Curaçao, have stops en route. In the stricter sense, however, the longest internal flight would be Hawaiian's service from Honolulu to Boston, registering 5,095 miles or 8,199 kilometers. However, it isn't the longest if interpretations change. Do you consider flights to overseas territories as domestic flights? Let us know by leaving a comment. In addition to our daily YouTube videos, Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.